Good evening, YouTubers. I know it's been a long time since I've posted on this channel. I've decided, though, since I started this channel, the last video, of course, was that the guppies have arrived. Most of those guppies actually, unfortunately, have not made it. They've been moved to a different tank. Specifically, they are in part of my 55-gallon tank. Or they are actually in the 55, and because of some of the other tank mates that were in there, even though they are supposed to be able to live together, they kind of monopolized on them and unfortunately had some snacks. So I'm going to start a small series on this channel. As I get back into it, things have been kind of crazy with COVID and some personal issues going on, and I've kind of not been doing anything with the channel. However, I'm going to get back into it. I'm going to get my channel back up and going. And I'm going to start with a small miniature series that I'm going to do called What's in the Tank. I have 6 tanks in my house. 5 are freshwater, 1 is saltwater. And I have learned a ton about fish since I started this hobby just over a year ago. Matter of fact, the mollies that you see in the intro video of this YouTube channel on the guppies have arrived video, actually all of those mollies have since passed as well. For some reason, mollies seem to be, everybody says mollies are the easiest to keep alive. They are the exact opposite for me. I have bought tons of mollies, put them in the same tank over the year, and they don't last but a couple months. The longest one I had lasted about 7 to 8 months, and then it died. However, I've got discus that are one of the most picky freshwater fish you can have, and it's managed to live. No problems whatsoever. So I think it goes to say that fish are something that everybody has a little bit more of a knack to. Certain fish are a little easier to keep in certain environments. Now, a lot of things do have to take into consideration, such as water parameters, of course, how often you do water changes, lighting, what you feed them, who else is in the tank. There's literally easily 1,000 different things that go into whether your fish survive or not. I mean, essentially you are creating a natural environment in a unnatural circumstance. Imagine, if you will, taking yourself or a child or anybody else and saying, okay, you have to live your entire life as if you would in a normal world, but we're going to put you in this glass box that is 1/10 of what you're used to. When you look at it from that perspective, it is a kind of a cruelty to the fish. However, most fish that you buy in your local fish stores are captive bred. That's all they ever known. So it's okay. Now, if you went out to, say, a local fish pond or a local stream and, say, picked up a catfish, bluegill, even a bass, put them in a freshwater or saltwater tank, if you get a saltwater fish out of the ocean, in general, yes, you can do that, and they will survive given the proper parameters. However, it's not ideal, and it does cause a lot of stress on the fish. Their environment, food-wise, temperature, lighting, things like that are all different in an unnatural environment, such as an aquarium. So I want to preference this to, again, I'm no professional. I've been doing this for just about a year. I've killed plenty of fish, but as the channel describes, this channel is about successes, failures, things like that. Not everybody's going to be successful. And the tank I'm going to start with here is my saltwater tank. I've definitely learned a lot. I've definitely lost a lot of money on this tank. Saltwater is one of the more finicky specialties in aquariums. It's actually something that I dreaded doing for a while because it's not something that everybody can do. It does cost a little bit to get started. This tank has cost me more than any of my other tanks combined. I would be willing to say I couldn't put a complete dollar value on this tank. But it is one of my favorite tanks to mess with. I've actually spent a lot of time focusing on this tank here in the last couple months since I started it. and some of my other tanks unfortunately have been a little bit neglected because of it. But I've been asked in a couple local fish groups that I'm in on Facebook what I have in my tanks, what filtration I use, things like that. And that's actually a common question I see in the groups all the time about what people have in their tanks. What filtration is best? What lighting? What sand? What rock? What, heaters, things like that. So I thought I'd start a little mini series and just go over the tank as I have it. No right or wrong. Some of this, well, there is right or wrong, but some of this is learning by experience. I will post some pictures of some of the tank. If you look at my channel, the Aquarium Talk on Facebook, you'll see pictures and even some of the blunders. Starting off early on, this tank was started the week before Thanksgiving is when I started the tank, and it's been running since. I started out with a little 17-gallon octagon tank and thought it would be a great tank, but as I started looking into what I wanted to do with saltwater, some of the fish that were available, I realized the 17 was not going to be good. 17s are great for little 17 tall. They're great for things like seahorses, even coral. If you're going to have just a reef tank with just a couple small clownfish, damsels, something like that, something very small, you definitely can get away with a 17-gallon tall, because you need the height for coral and rock versus the area, the actual floor area of the tank. Early December, I decided to go ahead and upgrade this tank. Actually, it was right around, might even been Black Friday weekend. My local pet store, Petco, is who I usually go through. They were doing a $1 per gallon sale, which they do those about every quarter. They do one towards the holidays, and then they do another one typically towards the first of the year, and then it's every 2 to 3 months after that. And I decided to go ahead and upgrade this to a 29-gallon, and so I've had some blunders with it. I want to say about mid-December, I used a water treatment that is supposed to be safe for saltwater aquariums. Typically, I would not oust a company on a YouTube channel or even on social media. I try not to. But just for reference, it's called API freshwater, and I'll post a picture of it, or actually just a link to the product in my description, and as well as any of the other tools or equipment that I have in here. I will post links to some of that stuff in the description. But I used that API freshwater or API tap water conditioner for salt and fresh water. It's super concentrated with a stress coat. My apologies. And within a matter of 3 hours, everything in my tank was dead. Over $127 worth in fish, which doesn't take much in salt water. But within a couple hours, about 3 hours or so, everything in the tank was dead. The only thing I managed to keep out of there was a couple snails and pretty well my live rock. I did have a long tip anemone that survived for another couple weeks, but it inevitably did die as well. So I basically restarted this tank after that. Buffered it for a few weeks with pre-mixed salt water, where I didn't have to worry about using any chemicals, kind of let things stabilize a bit. And then I've now switched over to an RODI, or reverse osmosis, water filtration system. And I'm actually going to do a video on how I have that set up. RODI does not have to be as expensive as you would think. So I'll post a video about that as well. So once I started with that and started moving into using my own fresh made salt water at my home, I got a lot better with the tank, and so I started kind of restocking things. A couple weeks ago, actually not even a couple weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, yeah, so about a couple weeks. 2 weeks ago roughly, I put a glass lid on the top of my tank because, fun fact, if you use sorry, I'm actually trying to get my lid to close. There it goes. If you use anything like Scentsy or the Better Home & Gardens wax warmers, anything like that, or the oil diffusers that you can get that have like the essential oils, scented oils, things like that, what happens, those actually emit a fine mist or oil presence into the air. That has to settle somewhere. And unfortunately, it does settle on top of aquariums. So I went to go clean my tank a couple weeks ago, or about 2 weeks ago, and I noticed that the top of the water had a bit of an oily look to it. And when I broke the top of the water, where that oily settlement was, I could smell the wax warmer that I had actually just a couple feet away from the tank. So I decided to go ahead and put a glass lid on. That way it's essentially going to settle on top of the glass lid. I can wipe it off as I do my normal tank maintenance, which needs to be done again, which will be done this weekend. So over the next week or so, you're going to see a couple different uploads if everything goes the way I would like it to. This video is essentially just going to be an intro video to my tank series called What's in the Tank. However, within the next week, I do also plan on uploading a tank, or the first installment into that tank series, and it is going to be on my saltwater. Like I said, it's a 29-gallon saltwater aquarium. I'm going to flip the camera around here. I'm going to give you a kind of a sneak peek of the saltwater tank, and that way you can kind of see what we're looking at. But like I said, I've got 6 tanks in the house. 1 is saltwater, the other 5 are fresh, and they've all kind of got themselves a little bit more established and have been going for quite a few months. This is my newest tank that I'm working on, followed closely by, I've got 1 freshwater tank that I call my parrot tank because it has a couple blood parrots in it. And that tank I still have some issues with, but I'm working on the filtration with that tank. It gets a lot of direct sunlight throughout the day. Perks, or I guess you could say downfall of being in a single wide mobile home, I'm limited to how many windows I have, so naturally I try to keep them open during the day. But because of that, I do get a lot of natural sunlight. I'm also limited to where I can put my tanks. So that tank does get a lot of sunlight, which does cause the water to turn green quite regularly. So I'm going to be getting ready to get a canister filter to put on that tank, as well as my plan is to add a inline or in-tank UV sterilizer into that tank, which will help get rid of the green algae. So let me go ahead and flip this camera around here, and I'll get you a preview of the 29-gallon tank. Let you see some of the cool things that are going on in that tank, and then be watching here in the next few days as I plan on getting the first installment of that tank series up and running. And in that tank series, I will go over what heaters I run, how often I do my cleaning, what the filtration is, what fish are in here, a little bit of everything about the tank. So that will maybe be a little bit more of a lengthy video, and I may split it down into 2 parts. I may do a mechanical version of what's in the tank, so filtration, heaters, things like that. And then a part 2, which will be like the fish and invertebrates and things like that in there. So be watching for that video in the next couple days. So be watching for those over the next week or two as I get those uploaded. And like I said, this is going to start being a mini series. I'm going to try to do one each week, and it's going to be a What's in the Tank series, and we're going to get some kind of detailed as to what's in the tanks, what the plans are for the tanks, and some helpful tips and tricks about some of the things I have in the tanks, as well as I'm also going to do a video on using the RODI and how to get that set up properly. And then my plan is also to do a video on proper water changes and tank maintenance, and some things like that, as well as I want to try to start doing some product reviews. I've got tons of things in my tanks, things that I've used, things that I haven't used, or things that I've tried, things that I haven't tried, that I want to start doing some reviews on, because I've got a wealth of knowledge that I've gained over the last year. Again, I'm nowhere near perfect with these. I've killed plenty of fish. I couldn't even count how many fish I've killed at this point, especially with the saltwater tank. I've probably killed 8 or 9 fish due to mistakes. Again, one was API. I lost 5 or 6 then, and then I just killed 4 the other day by mistake with an error that I created. So, and I'll talk about that in the upcoming video on that particular aquarium, or on this particular aquarium. So be watching for those videos, and until then, peace out. God bless.